itself as something worthy of love. It transforms. I remember my first Mexican American Studies class. I was taking courses with folks that came across the border from San Diego, from Tijuana, every day in San Diego, and it was magical. And so I've gone 3 times to see Dija Latinidad. My students are all going, and so I'm putting a plug for that. But Adelante Twin Cities is about how do we make Chicano Latino studies accessible to folks in the Twin Cities. University of Minnesota is the only school that has a department in Chicano Latino studies. So one of the things that were talked about, Jesus Estrada Perez, like our homie that passed in August that Joanna was talking about, he was developing this program to like make the University of Minnesota a hub so that students from all over, from Augsburg, from McAllister, from Normandale, from MCTC could come and take classes here to justify, though we have to justify having more faculty. So we're working on that. We just brought in 3 fantastic faculty to interview and like come be like nominated for this one hire that they're giving us, this one tenured hire. And the department just met with Dean Coleman from CLA and said, hey, we want to take all 3 because we need them. And that request was denied, as it always is. And so they're only allowing us to keep 1 of those faculty members. So we have a campaign that we're moving forward, trying to mobilize, put pressure, and say, we need to love ourselves. We need to be able to teach our students to love one another and to engage in radical kindness and shit like that. So we are putting that forward. So I don't want to talk too much. We have a petition on change.org to sign this petition. We need 100 signatures. We have 51. So get on your phones right now if you have internet access. Right now as I'm talking, we need to get 100 signatures by the time I finish talking. That's the goal. That's the goal if it's possible. So please, I only have a few more things to say. I'm working with a couple sociology students, grad students here at the U. They have partnered up with Defend Glendale Townhomes campaign. And basically it's anti-gentrification campaign in Prospect Park. Folks are getting pushed out because they want to build high-rises and luxury apartments for people. So the residents there, largely Somali and Hmong, have said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have our voices heard. So they have an action on March 30th. They're planning meetings every Monday at 6:30. And they're really encouraging students to come get involved, come help out, come support the community in that way. And so those are really the big things. Are we at 100 signatures yet? Bro, just raise your hand. I need to see at least 5 or 6 people sign this petition.
Yeah, what is it?
Oh, sorry. It's at change.org. All you have to do is Google Chicanx Latinx, and it'll come up first Google search. I hate that I'm referencing Google, but you know. We just really...
35 more.
Okay, 35 more? Okay, so that's the goal. We need to get at least 100, because once we have the petition going through, we can come together, mobilize, and keep working together. So that's all the time I'm going to take, but I really appreciate sending, and give a shout out to Rasan over there, Who's Diversity. He's like shaking his head. And to Manu over there. Oh, okay, so I will say one more thing, because I lied about being done. So we just did an action at the President's State of the University address, and it was really cool, and I'm writing a term paper about it, so maybe I'll share it with folks that are interested, with this, the No BS Smells Like Doo-Doo campaign. So, just nothing but love for SDS, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Ken Gonzales is going to be next from API's Equity for Diversity, a coalition of Hmong, Southeast Asian, and Asian Americans fighting for the inclusion of their community on conversations around race and diversity. Welcome, Ken, everybody, please.
Hi, everyone. Similar, thank you for giving us this time in this space as APIs for Equity and Diversity. It's really important for us, I think. One of the things that when we started, one of the things that we would realize as with how this university at least treated and thought about the Asian American identity was that the university and a lot of administrators and professors and different areas of this university were perpetrators and complicit in advancing this model minority stereotype that exists within our identities. So as model minority, the idea that as Asian Americans we are well off, that we are the ones that are doing the best academically, financially, whatever it may be, that without even having taken into consideration what equity and diversity means for Asian Americans here on campus especially. So we were founded early in September when Java Lee, former Hmong faculty within MK, was fired after having his contract renewed, but then being told, just kidding, your contract actually isn't renewed 3 months after having been notified that it was. So within that 3 months period, was kind of bullied out of a job and cornered into pretty much giving out the position because it was too emotionally traumatizing and draining for him to stay despite whatever pay they were giving him. And that's important because Java was one faculty that at least got this attention in our community, but that this has been happening constantly to other faculties of color, especially faculties within the Office for Equity and Diversity, when the ideas and the ideals of different faculty members don't align with the philosophies and ideologies of the likes of Catrice Albert and the likes of Shakir Abdullah, that the moment someone is in opposition with the kind of mission that they want to promote, as when it comes to their ideas of equity and diversity, they will cut them and corner them and bully them out of a job so that those issues are silenced. I mean, the people that usually are cut from the jobs here at this university are the ones that are actually putting student concerns first, and the ones that are actually ensuring that students feel safe here on this campus. So initially, our focus was really how do we talk about Java Lee, and how do we then extend the conversation around Java to include the voices of other Asian Americans. And in our mission, intentionally disaggregating the fact that we are advocates for Hmong, Southeast Asian, and Asian American community as a responsibility that the university has to uphold, being in the Twin Cities, with the high concentration of Southeast Asian Americans, especially Hmong Americans, second to California, but the highest concentration within one area here in the Twin Cities. So that's a really important piece. With a lot of the work that we've been doing. So one of the demands that we had, obviously, was moving our Asian American Studies program into an Asian American Studies department, the only one still at this university that is its only minor-based program without a major attached to it, similar then to what the other three ethnic studies departments. And the argument that I think any ethnic studies programs is always met with is this idea of needing to increase student enrollment and needing to make sure that there are bodies and that there are interests to justify why we need to create a department. But the conversations around what kind of institutional support are we providing for these departments so that they have the resources and access to even being able to do some of the outreach work to increase the kind of student enrollment that would want to then sign up for being a minors or being in these classes. That kind of conversation isn't having had because just within the Asian American Studies program, our outreach coordinator works part-time, and she's one person trying to build outreach and community outreach, not just with students here at the university, but externally with other Asian American communities as well. So that's one of the pieces that we've been trying to address. And the other administrative concern that then comes with trying to increase student enrollment is the kind of hoops that classes have to go through to even be cross-disciplined for it to count for specific majors or departments. And I face this semester particularly. I'm currently taking an American Immigration History course with Dr. Erica Lee, and the class itself encompasses the immigration stories of all communities, but in trying to make it work with my Afro Studies department, there were administrative hoops that the department chairs unfortunately couldn't get through to even count that towards my major. When it's a class that is working to understand and build support for communities across all identity groups. That's another kind of institutionalized block that administratively can be so easily fixed, literally with like a press of a button and trying to make it more cross-disciplinary. So those are really big pieces. And then recently, we just got the Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander designator as a university. just means that as a community that we are eligible to apply for grants funding that would help support for Asian American and Pacific Islander students here on campus. So one of the things that came out of that was I found out through a supervisor, because the email that talked about us getting this kind of designator wasn't even sent out to students. And we weren't, the first time a member of APIs for Equity and Diversity was made aware of this designator was when someone from Minnesota Daily was asking her about it. And by no fault at all by the Daily, but more so the lack in this kind of transparency from the Office for Equity and Diversity. And I think is one that promotes kind of, it removes the ownership, similar to the problems that whose diversity has been able to move forward, but it removes ownership of how progress has been created on this campus. That before that designation even existed, it had to come from the voices of the students here on campus to demand for that to happen. Because in the last 5 years, the Office for Equity and Diversity literally had not done it, knowingly not doing it, without us pushing this kind of pressure on them. So now where we're at is really working to build, what we want is to hold in student accountability, or hold administrative accountability with student voices, especially when we find out how much money that we get, that we make sure that that money through that designation is actually working to support student services and student funding, especially with the conversations that I know are going to happen in the next coming weeks after the SSF funding is finalized, and the kind of bullshit that's going to come out of those funding cuts across the board. So what we're hoping to do is create a student advisory board to hold Office for Equity and Diversity accountable to making sure that with the process around disseminating where the funds are going, that it is being able to support Asian American and Pacific Islander students. So that's kind of the work that we're doing, and I'm really excited so that we've been able to work in coalition with members of Who's Diversity in some of the actions that we've been doing, because I think the other overlying piece of APIs for Equity University is this is the first time that the university has seen Asian Americans actually doing direct action work, right? That when we idealize the idea of Asians, that sometimes that can be misconstrued as passive people on this campus, when this is the first time we've been saying, fuck that, we are not your model minorities, and we will take action to make sure that change is happening as we see it and as we demand it. So that's kind of what's been going on. So thank you all for giving APIs for Equity and Diversity a voice in this fund.
Awesome, thank you, Ken. So our final speaker is Rula Rashid. She is the president of Students for Justice in Palestine. SJP just kicked off their UMN Divest campaign this semester, advocating that the university divest from Zionist companies as a way to bring attention to and stifle the ongoing brutal occupation of Palestine by Israeli forces. So,
us speak as well, and voice SJP's concerns as well. So like you just mentioned, we did launch our campaign to divest from companies that are committing or violating international law. The other day, on Tuesday, we presented this to the Minnesota Student Association, and instead of voting on it and debating on it, the morning of, President Kaler decided to write a statement saying that he strongly opposes the SJP resolution. And he mentioned SJP, so shout out to us. This statement it was published everywhere, everybody saw it and read it, and it affected a lot of the people who were on the fence anyway and didn't know what was going on. And knowingly did he post this the morning of forum. So there is a little bit of, backstory to this that some people don't know, but 80 legislators had written a letter to President Kaler demanding him to publish a statement about our resolution in student government. This happened on February 26th. So President Kaler, the weak leadership that he has, and we've already known this, he listened to that and he published it the morning of. And the original statement that President Kaler was supposed to publish was only opposing our resolution, but President Joel of MSA decided that he should probably add something in about the Students Supporting Israel resolution. So he decided to add a little thing at the end about how he doesn't support that either. It's the influence of President Kaler and outside voices that try to stifle the student voices is really problematic, especially when it comes to student government. Our SJP, we decided to voice our concerns with student government because we figured that would be the first step. Knowingly that, going to the Board of Regents and going to even the Social Concerns Committee, it's hard to get up there without saying, hey, look how many people support us. So thinking that student government would be the good place to go, President Kaler and the system still played against us and decided to post this the morning of. And the way that this works is that they believe that since there are big names and money behind these groups that are pushing against us and continuing to silence us, that will work. But there's only so much time for that to happen until people say enough is enough. The students on campus that have real concerns, and at Forum it was mentioned that we should focus on other things like things that happen that involve on our campus, because this is happening so far away. They don't know what's going on. They feel like they need to understand it fully. But we have to remember that just because something doesn't happen on campus doesn't mean that it doesn't affect students here.
Right.
There are students walking around campus knowingly paying tuition, that this does involve, investments of this university is involved indirectly or directly in companies that violate international law. And not only Palestinians, but Palestinian advocates and anybody who knows what's happening there, it is not okay for us knowing that our university invests in these companies. This does affect us, and just because something that's happening across the universe doesn't mean that it doesn't matter here, and that we shouldn't talk about it here, and that we shouldn't debate it here. Where else can we go to voice our concerns if we can't even go to student government, right? So this was something that was basically like a slap in the face, because not only was it Kaler that was opposing our resolution and not allowing us to speak, but it was the students that represent us. We are their constituents. They are supposed to represent the student voices. And they decided to strike both resolutions off the agenda because it was too big and they didn't know what was going on. I mean, the things that student government deals with is already big enough. Mental health awareness, sexual assault prevention, these are real topics that are really big conversations too. But that doesn't mean that you can't listen to the students' voices at the same time. As elected representatives of the student body, it was really, really shameful to know that they fell for the trap that Kaler falls with all the time. Another thing that Students for Justice in Palestine, went through was that the SSI resolution, Students Supporting Israel, if you guys don't know, they had a reactionary resolution coming at ours saying that we were anti-Semitic. It was presented saying that if you criticize Israel, you are anti-Semitic. That's very problematic as well, and this was a violation of the First Amendment, which is free speech. This resolution, when somebody asked to strike both off of the agenda, the opposing resolution, nobody came down to ask their resolution to stay on the agenda. Not one person. And that's because the purpose of their resolution from the beginning was just to take ours down. They didn't care about what was mentioned in their resolution. It was just a way to take ours down and to silence our voices. They voted their resolution to be taken off the agenda. That says a lot. That says a lot because their resolution was never to present their identity. It was never to speak on behalf of the Jewish community. The only purpose was to take our resolution down, to silence the Palestinians, and to silence our voices. This was a very well thought out and strategic plan that they had. But we are not going to be silenced, and we are not going to fall for what administration and even students are asking us to do, which is to not bring it up here. Just let's not talk about it here. Students are confused. If student government silences one identity's voice, then what does that say about every other identity on campus? Every single group that has a voice and has a narrative and wants to project that, where should they go if they can't go to student government? And the fact that Kaler put in his insight that morning of is and he doesn't have, since when does student government even listen to what Kaler says? When he increased tuition, I'm pretty sure nobody liked that in student government. But when he speaks out against SJP, they're all jumping on board. So I think that we really need to think about not only what Kaler says and what he does, but when do students listen to Kaler and why? When is it that we think that Kaler's words are meaningful and not? This is really problematic that they get to pick and choose what he says and what he doesn't say. We are not attacking Israel. It just so happens that there are human rights violations being committed, and it's not an opinion. So, but yeah. So thank you so much to SDS for having us here to be able to present, our narrative as well, and look forward to what's to come. Thank you.
Forum thing in a second. First, a couple of